Death at the gates again. Howling my name. Can't greet you today. I have a war to win.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Wolfenstein, the New Order, Uber difficulty video walkthrough. This is chapter 3, entitled A New World. So this is the awesome, albeit very short and sweet torture sequence. Very reminiscent of a lot of different cultural influences. And this is an introduction to the crazy melee system in this game. So when you turn around just then, he grabs you and he starts to stab you. And if you mash the trigger, you'll punch him in the face. The faster you mash the trigger or the more punches you deliver, the quicker that sequence ends. And that is a mini-game that will happen throughout this game. Whenever you go to stab somebody, or if they go to stab you and it happens at the same time and there's a little bit of a stalemate, it will go into one of those ridiculously awesome let's stab each other matches. A little bit like, was it Don Fry in Pride with that giant Japanese dude and they just like held each other's head, and it wasn't a tie plum. What do you call that? I suppose it's like dirty boxing, but there's a name for it. Is it a necktie? I think it's that. And they just smacked each other in the face, and that's all they did, both of them smacking each other at the same time, and the entire crowd goes nuts. It's a fantastic fight, it's insane. That's what happens in this game, and if you see that in this video, it means I've done something wrong, because the melee attacks, for the most, are meant to be used in a stealth parameter. And the awesome part of this level is it's a stealth level, and I love them. Unfortunately, as I mentioned in the previous video, the game seems to take your equipment off you for no real reason, so I don't have any throwing knives, so my favourite thing is now not with me until I find a knife. And some levels just don't seem to have them, some of them they're hid very well. That instance just then, if you're confident in your ability to shoot on this game, you can shoot moving targets. The problem that I have with it is the reticle of the pistol is not the best, and then there is ambient sway when you aim. So your pistol will sway up and down, and I don't actually know if the animation of the sway has any effect on the aiming. It might not be anything, it might just be visual. And the gun might fire exactly where it's meant to fire depending on where you hold it. But it's one of those things where I don't take the chance for that, and instead I wait to line the shot up. A fun little fact here, to my left there's a big radio tower. If you climb all the way to the top of it, you will get the marksman rifle, and you'll be able to zip line across onto the building with the commander in it. It's a pretty interesting little hidden spot, and the marksman rifle is one of my favourite guns on the game. I'm not going to do it in this walkthrough for the purposes of the marksman rifle's also very loud and no way to quieten it, and I'm going to stealth all of this except for the final fight against the two mechs that's coming up later on. Something else to note as well, I'm going to crouch around the majority of this level because I'm under the assumption there's a dog somewhere. There's only a dog at the very last area. In these areas you're not going to have any issues from the old canines, but I couldn't remember where it was, so I crouch a lot, and for those who aren't informed, the dogs can't hear you when you crouch. They can hear you when you stand up, but they can't hear you when you're crouched. And it just makes a lot of sense, because you'll notice the levels will tease the fact that there might be a dog around, because there'll be dog balls, and whenever you see a dog ball, it's generally an indicator that there's a dog somewhere. And for the most, the game is really good about this, but this is one of those more ambiguous areas where I wasn't quite sure if there was a dog, so I didn't want to stand up just in case. And once you've killed everything that's a threat to you in each of these zones, your character or the objective will update, and it will tell you that you should go back to the car. When it tells you to go back to the car, you're moving on to the next zone. There are, I believe, 3 different zones to this level. It's a 20-minute video, so it's a pretty lengthy one, but it's a very fun level. So just grab back onto the car, and as you move forward, we're going to get to the next sequence. But there's a couple of things I need to talk about, folks, just to, you know, elucidate some things that I've learnt while playing this game. The first one is Uber difficulty is the highest difficulty base level. It isn't the hardest mode in the game. I found this out the other day. Apparently the game has some hidden gameplay modes which you can find if you find all the Enigma codes. So once you collect all the collectibles on pretty much every level, it unlocks 3 separate difficulty modes. Each of them are set at the base difficulty of Uber, so they're all on the difficulty that you're watching, but they all have modifiers that make them arguably more challenging. The first one is, I don't know the names to them guys, I just gave them a brief read, but the first one is something along the lines of 999 mode, where you have just under 1,000 life, unlimited ammo, and the game is on Uber. And I assume that that is a mode where you're meant to just charge forward with double guns blazing and, you know, try and get to the checkpoints and get some really exciting gameplay. The second one is called Hardcore mode, which is the one I'm most excited about testing out. That is Uber difficulty, but there is no health pickups and no armor pickups, which makes me think that you probably start with 100 life, maybe 100 armor, and it regenerates as it normally does. It's just checkpoint to checkpoint, and when you die, it will refill your life to full, because I can't imagine, you know, getting down to 20 life and playing the rest of the game with 20 life, and if it is, it would make it possibly the hardest difficulty on this generation so far. Because this game on Uber with 20 life is essentially one hit from anything away from death. Very, very difficult, so I'm eager to see how that works, and if it's worth covering, I'll probably do it. So you might see more of this game on the channel depending on if people want it and if it is as difficult as it sounds. And then the final one is the obligatory bullshitty permadeath mode, which is called Iron Man, where you get 1 life, it's on Uber difficulty, and that's it. So if you're the type of person that likes the stress of, you know, not making any silly fall mistakes or not getting screwed by your pad while you're trying to make a jump mistake or stupid rail sections or instant kills by shotgun heavies, then that's the mode for you, because when you die, it's over, you're done with. But once again, I reckon that difficulty mode can probably be cheesed by just backing up your save, because every other permadeath mode can be cheesed that way, which it's kind of cheesy, for lack of a better word. But this room here, I notified the people that I was here, which is a bit of a mistake on my part, but it's one of those moments where the stealth really doesn't work as well as you'd like it to. And the room that follows this has kind of a blind corner where there's a bunch of dudes on a balcony waiting to ambush you. And in my mind, I wanted to grenade them, but for some reason, they knew I was there before I entered the room, so they weren't in the position they normally would be in. So that didn't work at all. But Uber is very manageable. I've been getting a lot of tweets, a lot of people asking me, is this difficulty as hard as the developers said? No, it's not. But it can be very difficult. There are certain moments where you die insanely fast. But the funny thing is, those moments happen on every difficulty. I was watching Darkside Phil, the guy who I think is hilarious for all the right reasons. He was playing this game, and he was coming up against those heavies with a shotgun. And he had 100 life, and they killed him in 2 shots, and he was playing on normal. This is 2 difficulties higher than normal, and they kill me in roughly the same amount of shots. So it would seem that the shotgunners are just terrible on every difficulty. You know, they're one of those enemies that is difficult across the board. So the difficult spots on Uber are probably very similar to the difficult spots on any other difficulty. But this is another stealth area here, and this is one of those moments where on my first playthrough I couldn't figure out how I was meant to get to this commander without going through the guys. And once I'd killed everybody, when I explored the room, I reverse engineered the path that I'm following now. Which, if you're ever playing a game and you ever do a difficult section and you wonder if there's a better way to do it, the best time to search for alternative paths is after you've beat it. Once you've killed everything, before you move on, have a look around, see if anything is there that can be done. And that is how a lot of strategies work. That's how I find a lot of things. And it enabled me to find this one, which gets you directly behind the commander and lets you kill him so no reinforcements can come. From that point onwards, I do kind of screw up the rest of this room, but it's not really much of a problem. It's just my inexperience when it comes to knowing where the people were. So I do know there's one guy patrolling the room there. There's also a guy to my left on the balcony, But I wasn't aware that the guy was on the balcony, so that's the reason that the mistake happens here. But compared to some of the circumstances and situations later on, this early stuff is really easy. And it's one of those things where you're forged in the fire of baptism with these kind of games, where towards the end there are so many insane enemy gauntlets, just massive marathons of dudes, that when you come back and you play on a second time around, the rooms that previously felt quite dense and filled with enemies are barren compared to some of the stuff that you've put up with. And it benefits you massively, and it's that learning curve that you don't notice. Ooh, that's a great example there of the detection on this game. You'll notice it said "huh" on the screen. He saw me, he carried on moving, I carried on peering, and that was enough to trigger him, and he detected me, and he came and tried to kill me. My fault. I should not have tested it. To my left, up there is a guy, I can't see him, I'm about to get shot, there you go. 12 damage on the life, my armor's gone, and then I kill him. So, once you've done this, you are now free to carry on. But I was doing a couple of the perks last night. The collectibles on this game, for whatever reason, are kind of challenging to find. I feel like most of them are simple, but a handful of them are just... I had no idea where they were, and I'm not following a guide or anything just yet. I do think when you put your map up, it shows you where they are, and then in some instances it doesn't. I don't really know how that works, because on some levels I had a really easy time finding a ton of stuff, and on others I just didn't find anything. But some of the perks that I was going for are a kind of a nightmare. For instance, there's one where you've got to get enemies to die by dropping their own grenade. And it's one of those games where, on any other game I've played, when an enemy's cooking a grenade, when you shoot him, it stuns him long enough for the grenade to kill him. That's kind of how it works. You shoot him, he drops the grenade, he dies in the panic that ensues. Not on this game. On this game, you can shoot people 4 times, and they still throw it perfectly at you. It's really strange. It took me about 50 retries on a spot that I'd got where a guy reliably threw a grenade at me in a trench. And it took ages to do it, and combined with how long the game takes to load on the current gen, it just wasn't very fun. So this is the room where I try and throw a grenade. It doesn't work. It's okay though, because the people had already moved. This is the ambush that I mentioned, and because the first guy knew I was here, I didn't have a chance to do it the way I wanted to do it, but it's all good. Just be careful with those grenades. Sometimes they look like they're spot on and they bounce off shit that doesn't even look like it was there. Similar to rockets, sorry. If you use the rocket secondary function on this gun, make sure you're not near any cover. For some reason, these days in games, we still haven't got past the whole I'm aiming out of cover, yet when I fire, the bullet or the projectiles comes from the centre of the screen and hits the fucking cover and kills me thing. That's still a massive problem. And it was worse in Gears of War. Gears of War was the time when it really bugged me. And I don't know how it was never fixed, because Gears was usually really good at that type of stuff, but if you went into cover with a boom shot, and you aimed out of cover and fired, there was a large percentage of chance that you were about to turn into a piece of beef burger. And it felt really unfair. Until you learnt never to do it. And then you kind of got over it, but this is the final area of the level. There's a handful of dudes here, there's a dog here, and there's a commander. I'm going to go straight for the commander, and at this moment in time I was feeling quite brash and brave, and I decided to run as opposed to just crouch walking. It doesn't really make a difference, I don't think. Now this area is very simple. When the robots turn up it gets a little bit trickier, but the key with the robots is damage. If you have grenades, which you should have, you should be saving your grenades for this sequence for the robots that are about to turn up. Throw a grenade at one of the robots to stun it, make sure the other robot can't see you, and then unload with double machine guns. Chances are before it even recovers you've killed it. And then you can just do the same to the other one, pick up some ammo, repeat on his friend. On this walkthrough, however, I'm going to show you a different technique, because it occurred to me at the time that perhaps not everybody will have grenades, perhaps not everybody will have the weapons that I'm using, so I wanted to show people a slower but safe method of getting rid of them, which involves getting really far back, putting them in a spot where you can shoot them and they can't shoot you, and then shooting them for a lot longer than I would like. But it is a strategy, and it's an alternative to the really quick kill, which you're going to see displayed on the next level, which is Is it a London Nautica coming up, I think, level 4? I might be wrong. But this is the area where you need to be careful, because there is a dog outside the cabin directly behind me. And there is a commander in here. And a couple of dudes exploring, so just watch out for them. But I was experimenting earlier with mashing crouch when I move, which makes you stand up and then crouch again, because as you stand up, you move faster. And by bashing it, I was hoping I could kind of cancel the noise it made from moving stood up by crouching, but getting the mobility of being stood up. And I really couldn't tell if it made a difference. What it did do is make me look like a twat, and if anybody's got like motion sickness, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But it was worth testing and trying out. I just did not see if it made any real difference. But there goes the commander. That means no more alarms. And you have a choice here whether or not you want to pick up the overcharged health. And I was reading on a forum the other day. It was Xbox 360 Achievements forums, because if anybody doesn't know, when I finish my walkthroughs, I generally advertise them on those forums. Just to help people who are struggling with the game and spread awareness and what have you. And my guides never get sticked. I believe it's because I don't host them on their site. I think it's because I put a link to a playlist, and I don't do this because I want to steal their viewers or anything along those lines. I do it so that it's easier to follow, and you know, it's the convenience of me. I've taken the time to make the playlist to make the management side of it easier, as opposed to doing all the fucking lines of code and copy pasting all the links, which takes a lot longer, and I'm not really interested in that because it's not really what I want to be doing. I'd rather focus on making the work than promoting it, even though promoting it is arguably more important and one of the many downsides to the way that I do things. But my guides never get sticked on that website for whatever reason. Maybe they just think the shit, I don't know. But what does happen is you'll notice that there's favourites on the forums who make guides themselves. They make written guides and things, and they'll link stuff. And those things get sticked all the time, which I suppose is just the way it works. And in that guide, it mentioned the Uber achievement, and it was telling you how to play the game. And unfortunately, I'm not going to say it was bad. It was just obvious and strange to me anyway. Which, this is no judgment to the person who wrote it. I don't want to offend anybody. It's just an observation. But one of the first things it said is never ever overcharge your health. And I understand why they would say this, because you're wasting potential heals should you need them. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with doing it. There's nothing wrong with overcharging your life. It works towards your perks. It gives you a nice safety net of HP. Like, it seems like a very strange thing to say to somebody, and it said it with a firm intonation. So there's a lot of people that are probably, you know, avoiding healing because they're afraid that they're doing something wrong. And to me, it just seems a little strange that they would be so sharp with that. And then it mentioned a handful of other things. Once again, you know, some I agree with, some I didn't agree with. And then below it, it did the ultimate thing that I hate, but I understand at the same time. It gave you all these tips on how to do it, and then gave you a way to get out of doing it. And I don't know how anybody feels about this. This is the technique, by the way. Do you notice how I'm on his right-hand side, his right has his gun, and I can't see it, so it's not hitting me, and I'm leaning out on his left, which is my right, which is very confusing. Thus, he can't hit me, I can hit him, and it works really effectively against these robots. But what I mean by this, guys, is that there's a glitch in this game which happens in a ton of things. And essentially all you need to do is beat the game on any difficulty and then reload the final chapter on Uber and beat it. And then you'll get the achievement for beating the full game. It's sad to see this for personal reasons because it means that this walkthrough never stood a chance before I even made it. Not that it stood any more of a chance on YouTube because, you know, it just doesn't really when you've got the Rad Brad showing you how to play games in a masterfully skillful way. But it's... you don't even have to beat the game. You know, you can go through on, what is the lowest difficulty, I'm a Giant Baby or something daft. You can play it like that, and then just do the final sequence on the hardest difficulty. So it makes me think, what's the point in this? I could just upload the final video, which will be a minute long because I absolutely shitstorm the boss, and then that might be the only video that gets any attention. And it can be really frustrating as a content maker when you see things like that, but it's poor programming on the part of Machine Games. They should have made it so that that wasn't the case. Achievement hunters and trophy people are super happy because it means that they can get the trophies and the achievements much quicker than it would normally take. And a lot of people, you know, they will do anything they can to put the least amount of time in to get the most amount of reward when it comes to those achievements and whatnot. Which is, you know, it's different strokes for different people. But thank you for watching anyhow, and thank you for listening. And as always, you take care.